Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-minute Histories videos. And today I'm on 33rd Street, just above Falls Road. And if you're following along real time or you're watching this video, you can see that it is finally snowing in Baltimore. And for generations, when it snowed, many of us in Baltimore have turned to salt boxes, like the one behind me, to help us get our cars unstuck or to help us navigate slippery sidewalks. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Salt boxes. If you were thinking, ho hum, that's boring, boy, are you wrong. Our salt boxes have been featured on Good Morning America, The New Yorker. We have calendars about our salt boxes. You can buy a zine about our salt boxes. And that's because a number of years ago, a local salt box aficionado started noticing their beauty, and then a local artist started decorating them with artwork, and then things took off. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Let's start by saying that ever since we as humans have been building roads, we have been trying to figure out how to keep them from getting slippery. In ancient Rome, when the Romans built roads up in the mountains, they built them with a little bit of a tilt and then put grooves in them so that the water and ice and slush would run off, trying to keep them from being slippery. We didn't start using salt, sodium chloride, until the 1930s. That happened in New Hampshire when the folks in New Hampshire began putting salt down on local roads and highways. And pretty soon, municipalities and states across the country were doing it as well. To give some perspective, each year in America, we put down between 10 and 20 tons, million tons of salt on our roads each year. That's 10 times more than the amount of salt we put in processed foods, and we put a lot of salt in processed foods. And we in Baltimore contribute to that salt contribution, and we do it on our roads, but with a little bit of a twist, and the twist is salt boxes. Each fall, the Department of Transportation puts out boxes like the one behind me and then fills them with salt. And each winter, when it snows, we scoop out salt by the cupful using a shovel or a plate or an old hubcap. I think the most common scoop now is a Royal Farms coffee cup. And then we help keep the roads and the sidewalks safe. That seems pretty straightforward, but it's not universal. There are no salt boxes in New York City. Baltimore County abandoned its salt boxes a number of years ago. Anne Arundel County and Carroll County also abandoned its salt boxes. According to at least one article, it suggests that they felt that people were more at risk digging the salt out than they were either walking or driving on the streets and sidewalks. But at least since 1969, we in Baltimore have entrusted our citizens to safely scoop out salt out of the boxes and help keep our streets and sidewalks clear. The way it works is the Department of Transportation puts out the boxes in the fall, fills them up, and then in the spring, on what's known as Ascension Day, if you're a salt box aficionado, it's a tax day, April 15th, the Department of Transportation begins picking them back up to bring back home to get refurbished. Things went along pretty smoothly for a number of years, up until about 2017, when an aficionado, salt box aficionado named Robert Atkinson began noticing salt boxes. And he really began noticing them. Let me read to you what he wrote about it. He said, "A switch had gotten flipped and I started really noticing the salt boxes. Each is different depending on placement and exposure to weather. Each represents a battle between a corrosive, salt, and materials, wood, paint, and nails, that corrode. The tension gives each salt box its terroir. I was smitten." And he was smitten. He began photographing them and then putting them up on Instagram, and people started noticing. And then early in the pandemic, when the Department of Transportation was short-staffed, like a lot of agencies, it couldn't pick up all the salt boxes in the spring. And a local artist named Juliet Ames noticed that one box near hers was missing its letters. Each salt box is painted yellow for safety and then has the words "salt box" stenciled on it for identification. And the words on this one had eroded off. Ames was a local jewelry maker who used ceramics. So she went back home and cut out the letters "salt box" out of ceramics and then stuck them on the side of the box and then tweeted out a picture. And then things went viral. That was step one. Step two was the Department of Transportation. Now, they could have come in and said, "Hey, Miss Ames, don't deface public property." They didn't do that. Or they could have come in with a bureaucratic response, something like all salt boxes have to be the same. But they didn't do that. They came in and they embraced it. it. They said, we love it, and they basically said, go for it. And a number of local artists joined Miss Ames in sprucing up the salt boxes, most with themes about salt or about Baltimore. And so today we have dozens of art boxes around the city. We have got Billie Holiday salt boxes. We have got Cab Calloway salt boxes. We have Tupac Shakur on a salt box. We have Divine on a salt box. We've got Natty Boh on a salt box. And here we have the Department of Transportation coming by, maybe to fill up the salt box. Good morning. Or maybe to plow our roads. Off he goes. We have one that says Hamden Beach with a pink flamingo on it. We have got the iconic Baltimore rat on a salt box, and we have a salt box that simply says chicken box. And if you don't know what that is, look it up and you will learn a little bit more about Baltimore. Atkins, the progenitor, started taking pictures of these and then mapped them out on the internet. And many of us during the pandemic kept our sanity by exploring neighborhoods in Baltimore at a safe distance outside, one salt box at a time. All right, I'm going to wrap up and try to answer the question, well, what happens to the artwork when the salt boxes get picked up on Ascension Day to go back to get refurbished? And yes, every single salt box is made by hand and refurbished by hand by Department of Transportation staff. Well, the answer is that the DOT folks try to save each of the boxes to the best they can that has artwork on it. And when they can't, they pull off the panels that has the art on it and keep them in case the artist wants it. Pretty neat, thank you. So I'm going to wrap up and say thank you to Robert Atkinson, thank you to Juliet Ames, thank you to all the artists and all of the folks at the Department of Transportation who make this possible. Go Baltimore!